edgings, and I call spiked edgings not really specifically plastic or aluminum because it's really the spike that fails over time with the separation. But it became one of my pet peeves that I'm doing everything right. I'm extending my base, using the right materials, doing proper compaction, and I was using an edge restraint product that was, in my opinion, was letting me down. And I know you don't have quite the freezes like we have in Ohio, but you do have a lot of wet weather and movement. And if you've been doing it long enough, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about with being able to see a rail type edging a few years down the road start to expose itself and separate. So I used concrete for a few years. I liked the speed of it, and that's when I got serious, back really 2012, when I really started messing with admixtures, and then of course hired some folks that are way smarter than me to help me put together a formula, some really good engineers. But we'll hop into, hopefully you guys leave here today and you'll see the difference. I know compared to some of the other wet edge restraints, Perma is going to be the more expensive option. So I'm here to tell you what the benefits, what you're paying for, because obviously money's important on our job sites, to show you what you're getting. So we definitely believe we're the best choice at wet edge restraints. And we're going to go through some of this, but these are kind of the highlights. Non-porous aggregates, way more flexible than concrete, and some of the other wet edges are more permeable. And I'm going to show you why all those things are extremely important. We do sell Perma currently in a 5-gallon bucket. We might have some surprises coming in March with some different packaging options. So the non-porous aggregates, that's very important. Most concretes, say you go to Menards, Lowe's, wherever, get your bag of concrete. Most concretes are 80% aggregate. That's going to be your gravel, your sand, and then the other 20% is Portland cement. When we first started testing with Perma, we used porous aggregates, meaning a lot of the limestones, some of the granites, they're very porous. You can't really see it with the naked eye, but it's going to absorb water like a sponge. It's going to stay wet for a while. So we started using porous limestone, and everything was pretty good. The benefit to that is that the Portland and everything will bond into the pores of that stone. The downfall, used as a paver edging, if it's concrete out here in the wide open, it gets sunlight and wind throughout the day, it can eventually dry out. When you're installing it as a paver edge, a lot of you guys are, you're finishing that off with either dirt and sod or mulch, maybe some decorative stone. Decorative stone can dry out a little bit quicker, but when you're covering that with mulch or dirt, when you have a porous aggregate in your concrete, that's going to stay wet possibly for the life of the product. Especially here where you get these little rains all the time, it never has a chance to thoroughly dry out. So that causes deterioration over time. What you'll find in most concrete wet edges is you really won't see it up top, but it'll almost like rotted wood. As you can imagine, the bottom of that's staying wet, so over time it just deteriorates and starts to shed off. So if you're using a bedding sand or a chip, now you're allowing that bedding layer to wash out from underneath, more native soils come in. So that's what you're seeing, especially in freeze situations. It's obvious, it's staying wet, the aggregate in there is wet, you get a freeze, you're going to get more cracking and things like that. We did take a couple competing products. Again, we want to show the difference. We have nothing bad to say about the other products. We just want to tell you about our product. But we did take a couple competing products, took the same amount of aggregate. So basically we sifted the gravel out of them. Obviously we couldn't sift to get the sand separated from the Portland, but we did get the aggregate. You can go, yeah, so basically we took 7 ounces of a couple competing products. You gotta figure when we started this, the only competitor was concrete. So all of our stuff was, hey, what's the difference in perm edge and concrete? And this is similar, but we wanted to show some of the things here. So we took 7 ounces, we let them all soak in water for 24 hours. Basically, sat them out in these grains, drained all the water off, and let them dry for 24 hours. So then we come back to our results. Perm edge basically weighs the same amount as it did when we started. The others picked up 0.6, 0.8 ounces after 24 hours. That was just to show that gravel retained and held that water, all in the same room and all that. So wanted to show you that. We also, the flexural strength of perm edge, that was just to show that our aggregate, when I'm talking about the porous versus the non-porous. We've done a lot of testing. We continue to test. So we did lots of tests, field tests. We're in a fortunate position in our area. There's a University of Dayton that we've been able to use their senior project. So when we first started, we hired a fancy engineering lab, and the testing was outrageous. It works out good with the university because the seniors use it as their final exam, and basically they test whatever we're looking to test. We usually do that 2, sometimes 3 semesters a year with the university. So the students get to work on real life projects, and it's overseen by the professors in the school. So we're doing some testing now. So we're constantly testing. So all of the tough part is you have to follow ASTM standard testing. So when you're doing the flexural test or the PSI, you have to follow, your slabs have to be certain size. But we've done all of our testing there. So we can't really speak, I don't know about the other products, where their product testing is with flexural permeability. Unfortunately, I've never seen those numbers. Maybe they're out there. But so this is basically talking about the difference between perm edge and you buying a bag of concrete. Perm edge is about 783% more flexible than the concrete you're going to buy in a bag. Obviously, you're not going to be able to just bend it, but it's going to withstand a lot more flexing on your base than standard concrete. So basically, you're going to get, that's just a picture, about 3 pounds of a desensitized silica fume goes into every bucket of perm edge. And that really, that's where a lot of the flexural strength comes from, along with the macro fiber that we use in our product. The macro fibers, again, that testing, we continue to test. When we first brought the product to market in 2016, we had more of a lot of you guys might like, they call it cat hair, like that fine fiberglass that they'll put in driveways and things that you don't really see. So we tested some different fibers. Seeky came out with some different fibers that we tested. And so that's just an example. I'd say, competition B, similar in size to the fibers that we have, A, not so much. And that's, ours may have a little more fiber. It can be really touchy. More isn't always better. So as we're testing fibers, like Seeky, for instance, has a recommended amount you should use for each application. You can go online and find that. So we had to test 1.5 times the amount of fiber, 2 times the amount of fiber to find out which was the best. Because 2X actually made it worse because it was fibers laying on top of fibers. So, so the fiber is going to help with flexural strength, and we don't claim perm edge is never going to crack. Sometimes it's real windy or real hot, you might get a straw crack the day of install. It's kind of a superficial crack on the surface. But those fibers are going to keep it from coming apart. Sometimes what can be misleading is, perma edge is just like concrete as far as curing time goes. It's going to be 28, 30 days before the product is fully cured and performing to all the standards that we speak speak about. You know, 2-3 days later, it might still be a little fragile. Of course, you don't have to worry about that on your job. Your customers don't have to wait to use their patio or anything like that. But just wanted to touch on the fibers. Permeability. So we get a lot of questions about this. You're not going to watch water come out the other side of permanent, so it's not. But compared to concrete, so we use another fume, which we do, basically it's called chemical air entrainment. Sometimes you can add air to concrete on a job site pneumatically, literally pumping air into the concrete, and that creates little air pockets, similar to like an open graded base or anything like that. You're providing void space that water is able to collect without cracking by pressure. So we use a different fume to get our air entrainment. That goes into every bucket of Perma Edge as well. And we're about over 40% more permeable than standard concrete. Another side of that is not only the chemical air entrainment, but it's also the non-porous aggregates that I talked about. So you can imagine 80% of that product won't allow water in, so that's a big part of that as well. To show some of that, we did basically a cured sample. It was really hard for us to get them to weigh the exact amount. We made a ton of them. So they're really close, 6.2 ounces, 6.4, 6.4. You can even see a little spot up there. I had to chip a little section off because it's really hard to get them equal weights as much as I measured. But I basically put together like hockey puck type sizes, and then we soak those in water. We soak those in water for 24 hours, let them dry for 48 hours, same room, same temperature. So basically there's our results. That was somewhat significant, about an ounce more, than our, some of them 2 ounces. Now permanent still way more if you want to go back and show, Kevin, 2 more. We still weighed an ounce more 48 hours later, because there's still moisture draining out of that, but the other ones were closer to 2, so they were draining out much, much slower. So we really did that for ourselves and to kind of help show people the benefit of that edge restraint staying dry, and that we are using things that actually make that happen. So as I talk about all of these things, obviously there's strength, flexural strength, permeability, and even early on when I was testing, working with the engineers, I knew what I wanted, but in my mind, all I could think is, man, this stuff's got to really be strong, right? If I'm going to market it to all the contractors, I've got to be some really high, 8,000, 9,000 PSI. And so our testing was coming in around 4,500 to 4,800 PSI. And I kept telling the engineer, what can we add to this? And finally, he set me aside. He said, look, I think you're going about this all wrong. At a thin profile like a paver edging, if you get too strong, any little movement, it's just going to snap. It's going to be fragile. Maybe if you're doing a 4 to 6 inch pour, but not as a paver edging. And that's what really sent us down the road of, we want to make sure it's strong, but the flexibility and permeability are more important for the specific uses of paver edging. So that's sometimes I hear the other products, we're much stronger. I don't know what those numbers are, but it's really not all about the strength. So a lot of our testing continues, just like when we changed our fiber in 2008, late 18, we had to test all the other numbers. Because when you change one number, now you're gonna look, well, what did that do to the other number? If I become stronger, I'm not as flexible. If I get too flexible, I'm not very strong. So a lot of our testing revolves around topping out all of those numbers as high as we can without affecting the other one by any major amount to make sure we keep the integrity. But the flexural strength and the permeability are really what's we've seen with testing, even the freestyle testing we've done. is really where it's at for paver edging. Not so much about how strong it is. The packaging, that was very important to us. As a contractor, nothing more than I hated was having broken bags or wasted materials. But we, you know, of course, if you use Perma Edge, you got stacks and stacks of buckets probably, which are nice, so you run out of uses for them. But anyways, we are possibly looking at offering the bucket and a bag. Hopefully by March, we'll have those offerings that will, the buckets are expensive, so that'll help if guys aren't too concerned with the bucket, or have buckets that you can transfer, product in. But the bucket is really nice, especially with the rain. You get here, Western Interlock can deliver you. It can be delivered with your pavers. You don't have to worry about rain or wasted product. Has anyone that used Perma Edge, have you ever opened up a bucket that had hardened material inside? You did?
Once.
Yeah, was there a crack in the lid or something?
Not that I was aware of.
Okay. Was the whole bucket hardened or
The
was
whole
it just?
bucket was hardened.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. It's water got in somehow, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I asked about a hole in the lid, we've got a hydraulic bucket closer at the factory, and sometimes if it's not calibrated right, it'll right in the center of the lid, and you can't hardly see it. So we constantly have people check. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but it's hard to see, so that may have been what happened. Were we able to get you credit for that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Want to make sure. But yeah, it's going to be pretty rare that you know, even if you want to use half the bucket and seal the lid back on, as long as you didn't mix it with water, it's gonna last in that bucket. I guess just so I get your opinions, make it a little interactive. If you use Perma Edge, raise your hand if you prefer it to be in a bag to save the money for some cost savings.
Save money,
Yeah, well, I was just curious, you know, who would rather buy it in a bucket than in a bag?
I guess it depends on, like you said, time of year. You know, we get, 98% of our pavers delivered to our job site. So summertime, I get like base of light sand in a bag,
Right.
no problem. Wintertime, bucket,
Very
much
great.
preference, yeah, it would be worth it.
But so it'd be nice to have the option. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We will if we do. Well, I shouldn't say if we plan on offering the bag. We won't do away with the bucket. Just there's too many people really like the bucket, and but yeah, we will have other options as far as that goes.
How many pounds would the bag be?
What's that?
So how many pounds would the bag be?
50.
50.
Yep. Yeah, it would be a 50-pound bag.
Will
So
it
a little lighter.
will it be plastic bag?
Yeah. We've been testing bags. It's hard to, there's so many different kind of bags out there. It won't be like a plastic bag. But you won't be able to leave it outside.
Yeah.
Even when you look at a bag, like some of the poly sands say they're waterproof, and they're usually not. Some of them work better than others, but Portland cement's a lot more touchy to moisture than the sand, so pretty hard. Yeah, you definitely have to leave it tarp. Or what we're thinking too, if you use Perma Edge and you have a bunch of buckets, if it matters that much when you get the bags in, just have a guy take 30 minutes and transfer them into the both buckets you have, and now you're waterproof. We do that with my hardscape company. We'll get a skid of poly sand in, and we'll just transfer it immediately into the buckets and mark it with a Sharpie. Grass seeds, fertilizer, anything that can get wet on the job, we use all of our buckets for that. So if you're not, you've got Perma Edge buckets, it's a nice way to kind of waterproof all your stuff so you don't have to worry about it. Takes a little time, but days like today where you're working in the shop, just an idea to mark them all. So just kind of the history. Again, we sold our first skid at the end of 2016. Really sold our first truckload at the end of 2017. Like I said, I'm a hardscaper just like you guys. I still have my hardscape company. I run about 4 guys. Still do all my own design and sales. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple guys that work for me, been with me over 12 years. That allows me to work permanent. So it is definitely my passion is the hardscape industry. Coming up with this edge restraint, to me, of course, when you're running a business, it's nice to be successful or make money and those things. But the biggest thing for me was to find a better solution to what was available. There's got to be something better than pounded spikes. So the quality is the big thing. So that's to me, that's what's priced. And I think a lot of you can attest that, I don't know, I hear everything from 1 year, 3 year, 5 year warranty. Is anyone in here doing longer than a 5 year warranty on their projects? Yeah, it's pretty uncommon. But that is, I think a lot of us can agree, one of the first places you're gonna see a failure, if there is one, is on the edge. It's very rare to find failure in other areas unless you've got way bigger problems. Didn't use the proper base, you're getting sinking. Really, the only repair, issues that we've ever had is either on the edge or like a glue failure is typical sometimes. So that was the big thing, is to make sure that you had a quality product that would last much longer. At minimal, gets you past warranty terms on whatever. Permanent's gonna last a lot longer than that, but the thing that means the most, I think, is I'm sure a lot of you in here get a lot of your work comes from referrals. People see your work, customers talk about what a great job you did. So the longer that edge stays together, the longer you're gonna get referrals, the longer your project is gonna look good and stay together. But based on our sales, we roughly have 720 to 800 miles of perm edge around the United States and Canada on projects. We have had a few calls on failed product. Two of them were not our product. But they were very important to me. 2 of them I drove over 5 hours to look at. One, fortunately, was local to me, which is pretty rare. Literally 20 minutes from my house. Pretty large landscape company out by us, landscape nursery. Sales guy I'd never met before. He was actually kind of really mean to me about it, telling me how you use my product, you can't believe it fails. So, long story short, I get out there, and they didn't remove their bedding layer, was number 1. So the edging was right on top of some like sandy 9s, and about a 1/4 inch thick, flat. The kicker was it wasn't even our product. I think it was concrete or something else. Because when I saw it, I about died. I'm like, oh my goodness, this stuff's cracked up horrible. It wasn't our product, and then he was very apologetic. But we haven't, knock on wood, we have not had calls of complaints. But of course, it also takes you guys to do your part. If you're not extending your base and doing proper compaction and all those good things, no edging is going to work very well for you. If you don't put it on a stable base on the outside there. So obviously we're on social media, so if any of you do Instagram or Facebook, you can find us on there. If you haven't followed our page, it'd be great if you did. And there's also some videos and things on there. And our website also offers, there's a whole page of little YouTube videos. So most of your questions that you may have, about compaction or when can I do this, when can I do that, most of those are on our website that you can find. But if you're using the product or have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, call our office, or you can message me on Instagram or whatever. we'll be happy to do that. I'm gonna go into some other things. I know we got some demos to do outside. But I'll go over some more install stuff for people that haven't used the product. Does anyone have questions on anything that I just talked about? So for install, for those of you that haven't used Perma, you're gonna use 1 gallon of water per 5 gallon bucket. Kind of takes the guesswork out of it. Every now and then, it's pretty rare, is that 1 gallon's not gonna be enough water. At the end of our run, sometimes and we try to do away with it best we can. Every now and then there'll be a little more Portland in there. If it's really thick, just add a little water. But if you don't have a gallon jug, you can put 3 inches of water in one of our buckets. Then use it as a measuring cup, basically. And if you don't do any of that, just mix it to a thick oatmeal consistency. The one thing I will advise is just make sure it's a little bit on the wetter side. If it's on the dry side, it's gonna give you fits troweling it out. You wanna make sure it's workable. You guys can compact right away. We recommend that you do compact while it's wet. If something happens, you get pulled from the job site and you weren't able to compact, that's okay too. You can compact the next day. It's a cold joint. It's just gonna break, it's just gonna set in. But we do prefer wet. It gives you more like a built-in. It was all wet when you compact it, and it just tends to lock things in better. And if you're using an open graded style base, or not even full open graded, like a hybrid where you've got chips for your bedding, I think it's a little more important to compact while it's wet, because if you've done it before, if you're using bed or like sandy nines, there's quite a bit of moisture in them. So when you pull that bedding layer back away, the sand stays put. With your chips, you'll get undermining. It'll roll out, sometimes up to an inch and a half. I've seen it come out pretty deep, because it's so important that you're scratching down to your 3/4 stone. Using chips, you don't have to do super clean. You're getting a ton of undermining. You just want to make sure you're scraping that bedding layer down till you get to your 3/4 dense or open grade, whichever you're using. And that's really, really important. I've been surprised with the travel I do and trainings. You'd be blown away by how many hardscapers do not realize that they should be removing that bedding layer. So that's really important no matter what style edging that you're using. The main purpose of paver edging really is to create a dam. You're basically damming in that bedding layer. If that bedding layer can never erode out or dirt can't erode into it, your edge should not fail. It catches the lip of the paver, but it's not the main purpose. The main purpose is to retain that bedding layer. So just keep that in mind as you're installing and edging. So with open graded base, when you get that undermining, Perma will fill that void. Whereas if you're using a rail or stick edge with spikes, that's pretty much impossible. You're either going to have to try to scooch, to do it right, really, you'll have to remove those edge bricks after you get your edging set, level the chips back out, and reinstall the pavers. Most people don't worry about that, but that little inch of undermining, that's eventually going to level out. It's eventually going to flatten out. So with Perma, you don't have to worry about that. You can fine grade everything right away. You can come in immediately with your soils or mulch, anything like that. I know you don't get a lot of freezing weather out here, so I don't think it's a big issue. But if you are working with Perma and it's below freezing, a couple things you can do. The easiest is you can add 1 cup of calcium per 5 gallon bucket of Perma. That's the easiest. Just get some straight calcium. 1 cup per 5 gallon bucket. You're gonna have to get it installed, and don't let it sit. It might harden up on you. Big thing is to keep that water from keep the water from freezing. Let it get dry before the water freezes. But with your mild freezes here, I don't even, if you even put a tarp over it or raked over some native mulch or soil just to hold the ground heat, you're fine. You just want it to dry out before the water and it freezes is the big thing. I know concerning even like the rain, if it's going to be a lighter, moderate rain, go ahead with it. The permits will be fine. Every now and then, if it rains a little hard, if it, it's going to be a downpour, you're going to have to hold off. But I know a lot of you, unless maybe a lot of them are using easy joint, the sanding and edging go hand in hand, right? Get guys out there sweeping your sand in, doing edging, do your first compaction. Depending on the joint sand you're using, you may or may not be doing it in the rain anyways. But you can, as long as it's not, going to be a pretty brutal rain. If it's light or moderate rain, you can move forward with it. We are going to do some demos outside, so I won't talk too much about these things, but I'll show you more in person. One thing that's really important for your installers or anyone installing this, and I even get on my guys quite a bit about it, I think everyone thinks more is better. So I think we have the tendency to come real high up on the brick. One, if you come real high, you're not going to be able to grow grass very well. But there's actually a functional reason to staying low as well. We recommend, as a rule of thumb, stay on the bottom 1/3 of your paver thickness. So, 2 3/8 paver standing, I would stay 1/2 inch or less. I mean, if you go a little bit of it, you obviously don't have to be out there with a tape measure or anything, just keep it low. I would be more concerned on staying low on the brick than going high. And the reason being is, when you come high on the brick, if you have movement, whether it's freestyle movement or movement, that brick can heave, and when it settles back down, you're going to have a gap where it pushed out on the edging. If you stay low, it's more of a pivot point. Everything's going to move together, and you're going to get more linear footage out of the bucket. So you'd be cheaper than going higher. And so you can go wider if you like, just don't go off your base into the native soil. Don't ever travel off the base. Sometimes when you have corners that might push out over time, or you're concerned maybe it's on a steep hill or something, sometimes I typically beef up my corners anyways. Any 90s or corners, I'll really pack the permits good around those corners. Yeah, we'll get into some things you may saw on the table over there. Do many of you do paver driveways in here? Some? Yeah. We're not going to try to, ICPI, for instance, recommends a concrete curb for all driveways. And I don't want to deter you from that. But the fact is, 90-95% of contractors do not price a concrete curb in the driveway residential. It's usually not in the budget. So if your option is, hey, I'm going to have to use a standard edging, I'm not going on the concrete curb, I believe we have the best option for that. And we'll kind of talk about it outside. Western Airlines set up a nice little area out back here that we can do some more hands-on stuff. But you're basically going to use like a bilateral geogrid or a drive grid. More is better, but you're going to run that on top of your 3/4 stone, then your bedding, then your pavers, to where you plan it to where you're going to have 4 to 6 inches of that grid beyond the edge of the paver. So now you've got all this grid, you got bedding in the grid, you got the weight of the pavers, then you lock it in on the edge of the perm edge. Makes it very strong. A lot of people I've seen on straight driveways, they'll run the grid all the way across the driveway. So now you're locked in. You'd almost be impossible to pull back. But at minimal, we recommend 2 feet. I would like to see guys going more like a 4-foot roll of grid. If you're going 2 feet, just take your quickie saw and cut the whole roll in half. But I prefer on a driveway to see 4 feet on that. The only part sometimes can be tricky, because I know a lot of you like to overlay and cut. So if you've got to overlay and cut, you just have to be a little careful and not going all the way through your bedding layer with the saw, or you're going to cut that geogrid. But yeah, we can take a little break. If you guys gotta go to the bathroom, get something to drink before we go outside and do some hands-on stuff. Anybody got any questions? So I think outside, hang on.
Sorry, I know we talked about it all, we can't really demo because we don't have to, what about a base substitute, like foam, gator base, or quick base? What's the difference in submission prices with that, just in case it ever comes up?
So, it comes up a lot. So, people used to ask me this all the time, and I personally, for like gator base, it was funny, I was doing one in Ohio like 2 or 3 years ago, and the vice president from the Lions was there. And I always recommend people, I want you to succeed with whatever you're doing. If there's a better fit, I think, than Perma Edge, I want you to use that. So I always tell people I would use the edging that they recommend, the screws that come with it, with their edging that locks right to the gator base. Because I always felt like, if something goes wrong, they're gonna say, well, you didn't use our edging. But I was saying that, and the guy from Alliance like, hey, we love Perma Edge, you can use it with our product. And of course that was why, because they come up with something like it later on. But if you're going to use it with the synthetic base, I would recommend that where the problem lies is you really can't put it right on top of the synthetic base. Now, if it's like, there's one called click base, that you can't, because it's got voids that'll grab the Perma Edge in indentions, and it's pretty rock solid. SHS out on the East Coast has done quite a few demos and videos with that, using that click base. But something like gator base or a foam base like that, it's gonna break away if you put it on top. So where the issue lies is, what we've done and other people, you can cut, if you're gonna use it, we recommend just cutting it flush with the pavers. The problem with that is, depending on what zone you're in, you don't really have anything there to put it on top of. Maybe 2 inches of sand, or some guys use chips. So it really depends on what's on the outside of that. If you have something stable to put it on for it to last. Yeah. That's a great question. What we don't recommend, and some of the others do, and I'm not really sure where they're going with it, but I would not recommend Perma Edge if you do concrete overlays. Perma Edge, it's going to be a cold joint. If you go putting Perma Edge right on top of concrete, it's eventually just going to, I know they're very sealed floors, but we do a lot of trade shows and events, and we'll install the Perma Edge right on top of their floor. When we're done, we just take a spade, it pops right up, clean. So, if you do concrete overlays, you may already know. In my opinion, I'd be using aluminum with the pneumatic nails. Pretty bulletproof on top of concrete. We have run into instances where they've done a concrete overlay, but it comes right to the edge of the concrete. Now you're good, but you still need to dig down and get at least 4 inches of base in there compacted before you put the Perma Edge. So just keep those things in mind. If you got the edge of that concrete and think you're just gonna put Perma Edge right on top of the dirt, it's gonna work, but it's not gonna hold up for very long because you're just sitting right on top of the dirt. So you definitely need base under the product for it to perform properly. And it is good on either dense or open grading. When we first started developing the product, I was developing all based on dense grades from sand. So it's not just for open graded base. And the reason that it works so well is because it's just, if you install it properly, it's gonna be kind of come one with your patio install. And it's gonna float and flex with your patio, not work independently. And so that's why we just needed to make sure it wasn't gonna deteriorate and crack all up, and that's what we did with all the admixtures and the non-porous aggregates. If you stay low on the paver, you're gonna be able to grow grass just fine. I do know, some people do have problems with, they call me and say, hey, I'm not growing grass very good. Typically, they came, quarter, half inch from the top of the paver with the Perma Edge. you're not gonna be able to grow grass on that for the first few inches. So if you stay low, I'm taking the minimum thickness you're gonna use is 2 3/8. So if you stay low, you should be able to get 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches of soil right there at the paver, and then you've got more soil after that. And because it's not really zapping the moisture, it does grow grass better than a concrete, because that's zapping, it's drawing more of the moisture out of the soil. I believe, Nathan, for the permit out there, you had the mixer set up. Is that what we're using? The auger?
I don't have a mixer. Shovel.
Oh, sure. Good. That's how we, yeah. So you have all of the tools already to install permits, typically, and I'd love your opinions on this as well. So we find it, of course it depends on the brands you're using, if you're doing curves, but we find it usually will speed you up on your edging install by 50%. Right around in that area. Again, it depends on if you're doing curves. If you're doing a curve, you gotta cut the notches out. If you're putting a spike every foot like you should be using a rail edging, will typically speed you up. Once you get accustomed to using it, and that's something I'm gonna go with outside, I do see a lot of guys, it's really quick to install. I see some guys do videos and they're kind of messing around with it, and it's really fast if you're on a wide open job. A lot of guys, if they're doing 40, 50 lineal foot of edging, you'll mix 2 buckets at once in a wheelbarrow, and 2 guys usually install that mix to finish in 6-7 minutes. So, that's pretty comparable to 9 strips of edging. I know, didn't you on your contractor day, were you telling me about the people that you chose permits?
Yeah, so for the people that were there, the top 3 placers in our speedway competition use Perma Edge. So it's faster.
Yeah.
And from my opinion, like we do, our YouTube videos, and Colin and Cody and myself, we're out there working, and I don't do it every day. I'm a desk jockey, right? So the last thing that I want to do is get out there and count a bunch of spikes. But when we started using Perma Edge on those, it was a game changer for me because I'm already wore out, and it goes down so fast. But yeah, for the people that were there, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the speedway competition, it was night and day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you mix it right in the bucket with like a drill?
Yeah, that's why I asked. So you can use a paddle mixer on a drill. We make, we don't, but one of our dealers out on the East Coast, they make these augers, just like an auger for your Bobcat, but for a drill. So it's not fighting the product, it's augered up, it mixes it really quick. I'm still old school, I like the wheelbarrow, because I can just take it right around with me, where I'm, and boom, boom, boom. My guys, on the other hand, time is money, right? Plus their backs. It is easier. It mixes really quick if you're set up and ready to go. You do have to have an empty bucket because it's, when you get a bucket of Perma Edge, it's usually about that far from the top full. So you do need to kind of, like say for instance, we're putting 5 buckets of Perma Edge. Guys will bring 5 empty buckets. And if you don't have that many, you can just do them 1 or 2 at a time. But they'll split them, so they got 10 buckets, just kind of half the water. They're mixed and ready to go. You can even use the bucket to lay it out. So you're not dirtying the wheelbarrow, the auger's way quicker, it's easy to rinse off. So it is very efficient to use that auger bit. And if any of you are interested in one, just reach out to us and we have one direct ship to you. I think they're about $50. They sell, by ship. We don't make any money on them. We just try to help if you like an auger bit. And I forget, Kevin, did you give me that one? Yeah, so we have one to show you. Yeah, but it does help, but you don't have to have it. You've all done it without it. It's typically we'll mix and a guy will come along with the scoop shovel, another guy slamming it out, and then you've got all the little benefits, right? no chance of running a spike through an irrigation head. You know, no chance of running into rock. There's all those little benefits as well. And, you know, of course, if you're doing open graded base, although I hear it's a little tougher to get the aggregate for it, you really can't use a spiked edging anyways. I mean, spikes just are not gonna stick to open graded install like that. Kevin, do you have anything? You know, I kind of jumped all over. I want to make sure I don't miss something or that I should have talked about.
Oh, yeah, no, I think you got at the end there, that was a good point. So that's a big reason we see a lot of, especially as you get a little farther east where irrigation becomes kind of king, if they're gonna have any sort of green in their landscape. So everyone has, irrigation lines running through and just that one or two times the crew isn't unexpectedly finding a line and putting something through it. Yeah, it tends to work out really well. And I'm excited to talk, you know, the GeoGrid, I think is, it's gonna be really nice to show. It's hard to, you know, I've seen a lot of installs out here about, I've done a lot of jobs and, just to kind of go over how that works and why it works and,
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, the GeoGrid, I say for driveways, but there's quite a few contractors that are, I mean, they're using it on pedestrian jobs as well, just to give themselves like pretty much bulletproof, you know. I've seen guys using it on walkways and some patios and things like that. You don't have to, but you know, it's about the integrity of your project. So if you want to, it's not a bad option. It's just going to take you a little extra step to get that done. How many are any of you really installing on exclusively on open graded base or clear base? You are
I'm starting to, yeah.
starting to. Anybody else? Let's see, that you do sometimes the Sequoia? Yeah.
So, Chris, it's pretty difficult to get aggregates here in the Willamette Valley, but we do have on our app, I don't know if anybody's using our app, it's app.westernairlock.com. We have an aggregate located on there, and it tells what the quarries have on there. So if you're wanting to find something in Oregon, we're still working on the Washington, but for Oregon we have it. It shows where you can get the different aggregates. So it's difficult to find. So like down Corvallis, what's the one that the pit down there?
Coffee View.
Yeah, they have it, but like in the Portland metro, it's really difficult to find.
Well, they have it, we buy it.
We have it here.
Yeah, we can ship it too, so it can be cost effective if you're working with our minimum freight brackets and our maximum freight brackets, just so you guys know. So if you need a couple of yards, a quarter tin or something for your bigger job, then we can get it to you cost effective. Price
That's
it out.
great. Sounds like a great tool to use.
What's the website name?
It's
App.westernairlock.com.
app.westernairlock.com.
Or you can go to westernlock.com, scroll way down to the bottom and say use our app.
You have an app too?
It's an app. Well, it's not in the app store, it's a web app.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah. What made you, just the benefits you've read about to go over to open graded?
Yeah, we have 2 quarries within 20 miles from where we work and have open grade, so.
Right.
So that's why we went that way and we can work in any weather pretty much. I'm on the
Yeah.
coast, so it
Right.
rains 95% of the time.
Right. Yeah, I've been hardscaping 30 years. We pretty much, around us in Ohio, it's just accessible everywhere. You know, every pit's got, which one do you want? So it's a little more accessible, but we switched over, probably about four-ish years ago. And, definitely if you're able to get the aggregate. Obviously, it's not for every application. There might be an application or two that it's not. And it's important that you may have to run drainage for some of them, or a trench that runs away because it may collect water like a pond. up against the house, but we almost do every install with it. And I really wish, man, I wish I would have started doing it 10 years ago. On a 500-600 square foot patio, and I only run a 3-4 man crew with my hardscapes. It probably shaved off a whole day for us going up and graded, in my opinion, because when we do dense base, we would final our base and get it perfect. So you have that exact 1 inch of sand, because any dip's gonna hurt you. And with the clear base, you don't have to be that particular with it. They say that the clear stone with no fines, angular, it's about 95% compacted just when you put it on the ground. It just consolidates when you run a compactor on it. So that saved us a lot. We could put 4-6 inches in and compact instead of 2-inch lifts. Working through the rain, of course in Ohio we get a lot of freeze weather. But you can imagine how many times we try to work through the winter, we had to pull the dump truck in the barn and run the torpedo heater, so I left a 2 ton of chips and dust back there that froze up solid. The clear stone doesn't have fines in it. So it might be a little stiff, but it doesn't freeze. So for us, that was huge. Working through the water, things like that, the rain, which I know you guys get a lot of. So if you're able to check it out, I think it's definitely worth looking into. We weren't having problems on dense base with sand per se. You know, they were holding up, we weren't getting callbacks. But once I started using the open ground, I do think it's a bit better of a build. And you're taking the fines out of the equation. I guess too, if any of you do natural stone work, flagstone pathways, things like that, I'll touch on that a little bit. You definitely can use Perma Edge on it. What I will say is if you're doing like a gravel, sand bedding, or even a clear base install with flagstone, it will work. Obviously, if you've got a irregular edge, pretty impossible to run a paver edging, you know, a rail type edging on that anyways. Perma Edge will work and hold your bedding layer in, but you may get a little separation over time. And the reason being is because Perma Edge was developed as a paver edging that has interlock. As you all know, with irregular stone, you know, they might have 1 to 3, 4 inch gaps, and they're all independent, you know, so someone can step on one side of one, or, you know, just let you know what to expect. And once you put it in and a year later you go, Chris, I got a 1/4 inch gap, it's gonna happen with natural stone, but it's gonna stay in place and hold your bedding layer in. So it does allow you to keep that irregular edge and walk it out. So yeah, it's you know, here you get a lot of rain, a lot of moisture, so it's really going to hold up much longer than a concrete, and pretty confident some of the competition. But if you haven't used it, I hope you encourage you to. Like I said, Kevin, I'm sure would be happy if it's your first time. And then, like I said, when we're outside, we'll go over some of the uses of the GeoGrid and stuff like that. So, anybody got any questions? No? Maybe take a break, hit the bathroom, whatever, before we go outside. Thank you. I'm half deaf anyway, so at least my wife tells me. That might be a little on purpose. Anyway, so yeah, it's going to come in a 5-gallon bucket like this. Obviously, it's wet, it's dry in the bucket. For those of you that see all the fibers in it. Everything we discussed in that slideshow is in here. There's 3 pounds of fume, a pound of for the chemical air entrainment, and all the non-porous aggregates, Portland cement, and your fibers. Kevin already popped the lid off, so it's going to be, again, 1 gallon of water per bucket. The yields are a little difficult, but what you got to keep in mind is how thick your bedding layer is, and this is important. So when we were doing dense installs, we had a really consistent 1 inch of sand. Used 7/8 or 1 inch street pipes, and it was a very consistent 1 inch because our dense base was perfect. When you're in that situation, you should get around 25 to 30 lineal feet. 30 stretching it, we've gotten upwards of 33 before on a really straight install, but you should get around 25 lineal feet if you have 1 inch of bedding, and that being sand, not chips. When you move into the chips, that's where it gets a little hairy. You know, get you an extra bucket just in case. You know, that was kind of why we put it in the buckets. You do away with running back to your dealer to get back product. So just make sure you get enough. What we're finding on open graded base, between 15 and 22 feet. 18 and 22 is a good number to use, but with us, with doing a clear base, open graded base, our bedding is more inconsistent. My guys plan on doing about 1.5 inches of bedding, because with clear, what we find, if you only try to do that 1 inch, it's caused us more problems as we're screening out the bedding layer. You're using that 3/4 inch clear stone, pretty close to 1 inch thick. 1 or 2 sticking up cause havoc when you're screening out. So my guys tend to go 1.5 inches. We use the cast pipes that are about 1.5 inches. So our bedding layer is thicker. And then even at that, where your 3/4 stone may be a little inconsistent. So you might have spots that are 2 inches. So, you know, you got to think about that. If you've got 1.5 inches, 2 inch of bedding, you might get 15, 16 feet instead of 22. So just something to keep in mind with that. If you're doing 40 or, you know, say you know for sure you're going to need 2 whole buckets. We will usually mix 2 buckets at once. What we'll do is mix the first bucket with 2 whole gallons of water, so it's really soupy, easy to mix, and that second bucket mixes in much quicker doing it that way. So just little tips help speed you up. And if you use Perma a lot, it's not that cold, not super important, but I don't think I brought one with me, but you can get a real cheap bucket opener. But it's not that bad. But yeah, some of mine got big holes in them. Yeah. So if you've got a decent wheelbarrow that's not losing too much water, I put it in first just to keep it down sometimes. And then I'll go ahead and put my bucket. What's that? Yeah, I was going to do this, and then I'll maybe put a little bit in that to show them the mix. It's a simple thing, but it does actually mix. Here's the mix the Canadian test is. That's pretty equivalent to 75 pounds compared to 80-pound bag of concrete. It does. That's another test to the non-porous aggregate. Either concrete or mortar with concrete sand in it, or mason sand. You know, you guys have all worked with it before where you're like, man, this stuff's getting too stiff. I've got to re-wet it because it's getting hard. Typically, you'll have four-ish hours of Perma before it starts getting hard like that. But you can mix with whatever you're comfortable with, a flat shovel. Some guys like to use a hoe. Try whatever you want to use. Colin's already put the geogrid in there, and yeah, that's perfect. So he's got, again, that's what we would recommend minimal is 2 feet. Again, if it was me, that's the minimal I would recommend. I like to see it go 3 to 6 feet. Or if it's a single car dry lane, it's not going to be, you know, pricing your customer. Teach them about the benefit of it. I mean, why not spend another couple $100? You know, maybe you geogrid all the way across the driveway. It's not too wide. But this is a good example. You're going to remove the bedding layer. And then sometimes what you'll get, and I'll show you in a second, that stayed together pretty good, and I'll show you after we put the perm edge in, kind of where those rolled out. I'll pull them up and show you the perm edge is sucked up under there. But obviously, you put this on a pre-compacted drive already. What you'll find on the job, because you just put your 3/4 and your bedding down, is typically when you scratch that out, this grid might be lifted up to where those chips snuck down all in there. So I will lift the grid and again, try to get cleaned out down to your 3/4. The other thing that I find beneficial is you want that grid to be as flat as possible before you put perm edge in. I see some that are kicked up like this and it's coming through the edge. I'd rather see it flat because then that keeps any pull flat evened out. If it's tucked up like this and there's pull, it could, so not a huge deal, but I'd rather see it flat coming out. So again, on the back side, there's no grid, and on pedestrian traffic, you're just fine. You don't have to have the grid, but you can always upsell. And any of this I'm talking about, just make sure you're passing along that cost to your customers. I think if you explain the benefit, you'll be able to sell it to your customer. Just tell them, you want to build bulletproof patios for them. So once it's all mixed up, I prefer a steep shovel than a flat shovel just because it's quick. And basically you're just going to come, and after you install it for a while, you'll kind of get an idea of how much you need. It's a great two-person job. I can do it. Okay. Tyler's super experienced in this, by the way. Yeah, and you can talk to the guys. You can say, hey, I'm a little thin here. I'm a little thick. If you get sick, you can always move some down. You want to keep putting it down, Kevin, or you want me to?
Muy superior. Qué rápido.
That's all right. You want to put a tape on it? I'm 1 3/4 down.
Yeah, he's doing good. But I mean, he's doing a great job. You don't need to do any more than that. No one's ever going to see it. Just strike it off a few times. Usually it's 4 to 6 times. You strike it off, and you do want to get that little sheen on the top because that's going to really. You don't want it being real porous and grabby on top. So even though it's permeable, it's nice to shed off as much water as you can. But as you can see, that perm edge is going to lock into that geogrid. And now you have all this bedding and all the way to this paver. It would have to move as a whole section to move. It's not going to break away from that. You're leaving, it looks like it's leaving a spot. Just give me a wet rag or something and get it off of there. We really haven't had much issue with that. An aluminum 4-inch, even a 10 or 12 inch by 4 inch aluminum. A lot of guys, if you do concrete work, maybe you have mag trowels. That'll work too. But you really need that bigger trowel with your pressure. So you're really packing that in, compressing it properly. A little marginal trowel or something. One, it's going to take you way longer, and you're not getting even pressure, if that makes sense. So as you see, you know, he went all the way around. You don't have any brakes for your edging meat. You don't have to worry on your corners, anything like that. You have a little light through your-
Yeah.
Did he make it all the way around?
Well, pretty.
I'm just gonna try to show. So there's just maybe a half a spade worth in the bucket now. And what I'll typically do is beef up my corners, right? I mean, that's one place you might, could anticipate maybe having an issue or two. This corner's the light. If I've got some that I don't need still, and even if I do, I'll intentionally beef up my corners. And I'll put it a little heavy. I'll typically put it heavy on my corners. And just beef them up a little bit. Again, I would not come higher, but as long as you have base, you can go wider. Don't have to, but you want to beef it up. Just don't go higher. And I think Colin did a great job staying low. That's exactly what it should look like when you're done. Stay low on the paver. Pretty consistent, didn't waste material anywhere. And I believe you said, is this 20, how many feet?
It's about 20, like, 24-ish, because it's 8 feet long there. 11 feet here, plus 4. Yeah, something like that. One thing I do is, I'll try and go for about halfway up the paper. What I can do is normal concrete and then just smash it down. That'll bring me to that 5/8, 3/4 inch up from the bottom.
Yep. You're 24, 25 feet. Yeah, like you said, you got 8, 4, and that was 12.
Yeah.
Roughly around there. So you're looking about kind of like your typical paddle mixer you'll find to mix mud. You can do it, but you're fighting the material the whole time. It's pretty thick. So sometimes, if you cannot, you'd rather use usually a corded drill with a lot of power.
And when it ever gets re-exposed, now it just looks like quarter minus or dirt. Right? You've already kind of camouflaged it. I just, like, again, I don't like seeing
Yeah.
any of that. So the more I can kind of keep it concealed, the better.
Yeah. And you know, for you guys, everyone knows it's a common issue. You're never, we usually, if we're able to, we'll backfill with soil or mulch or whatever we're using before we final poly sand as well. Because, you know, everyone knows that last inch on this joint is pretty hard to hold sand. I mean, I've seen guys temporarily put tape up and all.
Right on the edge.
Set on the edge, not on the edge.
That was a user error.
Those happen with Kevin around. You guys haven't had a demo from him before.
In his defense, he's still sourcing for forgiveness. So,
Cuesta igual que si compras
oh, the one a couple of years ago? Yeah. That was a test of it that didn't How many of you guys will roll through and roll the packer? Love them? Yeah. Do you have the actual packer or attachment? So even like I talked about our testing, we're testing some things right now. I think, in March we're going to release something. I can't really talk about it, but we want to make sure that we're constantly testing, constantly trying to stay on top of our game with the product. Now, obviously, cost can be an issue, so we're trying to do all that we can do that stay competitive. We, don't want to outprice. It already can be a little more expensive than some of the other options, and we understand that. So cost is important to you as well as us. There's lots of things that you can put in concrete, but you can quickly price yourself out. Guys don't want to pay $5 a lineal foot for edging, and I get it. And we already get why should I pay $50 for a bucket of this when I can get a bag of concrete for $4 or $5? And that was kind of why I explained to you a lot of the differences inside. But overall, and most of you already know this because you've been in business for a while, it shouldn't cost you a penny to install Perma Edge. You should be upselling it to your customers. You should be telling your customers, hey, we don't use the spiked edgings anymore. We have found a better way. We believe it's better. It's got more integrity. It's going to help your edge life longer. So, obviously if there's other contractors using it, but you can also help set yourself apart from some of the others. Do any of you do a repair work? You get the phone call, hey, we got a patio, it's 10 years old, it's got some issues. Some of our biggest volume purchasers are big repair companies. It's a great, maybe you're doing the customer's back patio, and you see they got a front walkway that you can see the plastic edging on. That's worth talking about. Maybe it's already failing in some areas. If not, you can explain, hey, I just noticed, hey, Mrs. Smith, I just noticed that I can see your plastic edging, and explain to them what that means. Most customers don't know. Most customers, they think that edging is to hold the paper in. So you explain to them, if I can see it, it's no longer sitting on your base and sliding your bedding layer to escape. So it's a great upsell. A lot of contractors around us, they charge about $15 a lineal foot to come in, rip out the old spiked edging and put Perma Edge in. And it's a very quick job. You might do 100 lineal foot on a 50 foot long walkway. A couple guys be in and out there in a couple hours. So, charge them 15, 20 bucks a lineal foot to do that. And the other good thing, if it's not in bad shape, if it's just some tipped edges and things like that, the beauty of it is you can take out that edging, put in your Perma Edge, and then wear a glove, finger tuck those settled areas with the Perma Edge. Tuck that up under there, tamp it back down flat with your hand tamp, so you're not taking multiple materials out there if it's not in bad shape. Now obviously, if you got to research, it gets a lot deeper than that, right? How bad is it? What kind of install was done before you got there? And that's definitely one thing that you want to check thoroughly if you are doing that type of situation. A lot of us were in a hurry. You go, yeah, we can do it for X, Y, and Z. You get out there today to install, you start removing the edging and realize whoever put that walkway in before you didn't extend their base out. So the spikes are in dirt. So now you got a bigger issue, right? You told her $1,500, but you've also got to go now, dig it down 6 inches, install some 3/4 compact. So just make sure that you do a little more research into what you're fixing if you are doing that. But like I said, it is a great opportunity to kind of upsell or fix a patio, and you don't have to tell them, hey, I'm going to replace it with the same thing that failed in the first place. We have a better option now. So, yeah. So I don't want to keep you out here too cold, too long. I'm from Ohio, so this is like summertime to me almost, except for the rain part. Do you guys have any more questions? I know when I asked earlier who has used Perma Edge, and I was pleasantly surprised that it seemed like the majority had used it. Who has not used it? No? you think you'd give it a shot now? So I think they're gonna do a raffle, but even if you wanted to, we put some down and just work it, see how you liked it, you're more welcome.